Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to our City of Little Rock Board of Directors meeting for Monday, June the 20th, 2023. I want to welcome those that are in attendance as well as those that are watching online. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Miller.
Here.
Director Richardson.
Here.
Director Peck.
Here.
Director Hines. Director Lewis. Here. Director Wyrick. Present. Director Compuris. Director Phillips.
Present.
Director Adcock.
Present.
Vice Mayor Webb.
Here.
Mayor Scott.
Here. Director Warwick, if you would, please give us the invocation.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for allowing us to meet in this public forum. We're here to discuss topics that will benefit the people in our community. We want to work on how we can make life easier for everyone. Heavenly Father, give us the wisdom to make the right decisions. Let us not make biased decisions, but decisions based on solving problems. Be our leader during this meeting. Show us the way because you have chosen us to be here. Give us direction and let us not think about our own special interests. Open our eyes to solutions and help us make our city great. We thank you for our city employees. They work hard for our citizens. Protect our first responders as they are constantly being challenged in their daily work. Be with each of us as we travel home. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. May you please stand for a pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I want to take this time to recognize Troop 12 of the Pulaski Heights United Methodist Church communication, which they will be receiving their communications merit badge by participating today. If they would, please stand. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you all so much for your great work and commitment to service. Mr. Attorney, would you like to say anything? I know you have a special badge, don't you?
Well, I'm an Eagle Scout. The Communications Merit Badge is one of the required badges a youth, male or female, must achieve in order to attain the rank of Eagle Scout, which is the highest rank in scouting.
Thank you so much. I also want to take this time to recognize former City Director Michael Keck. If he would, please stand. We do appreciate your many years of service and commitment to the City of Little Rock. All right, we have a few additions to today's agenda. We have additions of M1, M2. Is there a motion?
So move.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please.
Mayor, if we could ask Jenny Bradford to come forward, our benefits manager. Just about an hour and a half ago, we got new numbers on M1, so we didn't have time to update the resolution, but I'd like for her to read it into the record, which will save the city money.
Jenny? Saving the city money is always a good thing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Directors, mayor, city manager, everyone else, thank you. We just received a quote from our current carrier. Statutorily, we have to have a deductible of at least $750,000 for our workers' comp insurance program. We were given the option to lower that to $500,000 for an additional, approximately $88,000, an additional $88,000. I can tell you that last year alone in one of our departments, we had over $1 million in workers' comp claims. So we definitely blew through that deductible of $750,000. By doing this, we will save the city at least $160,000.
Thank you so much, Jenny. We do appreciate you. We'll now continue on with the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
Mayor, before we start, since there will be new numbers on M1, when the clerk reads that on the consent agenda, could she read it as amended, and then we'll get the new numbers in?
Yes, sir.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with R. Valadez Construction Incorporated in amount not to exceed $58,098 for the G Street at Monroe Street Drainage Improvement Project and for the purposes funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. A resolution to approve the amended land bank policies and procedures, goals, and mission statement as guidelines for the acquisition and disposal of properties to include the policies and procedures, goals, and mission statement in the Land Bank Commission bylaws and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to execute a lease agreement with Ben Nelson Golf and Utility Vehicles LLC in an amount not to exceed $898,200. For some reason, I can't get that one out. $898,022.40 for the golf cart leases for various types of carts, both electric and gas, for use at First Tee and Rebsamen golf courses and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with Vine and Village in an amount not to exceed $180,000 to provide homeless outreach services within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with J.A. Riggs an amount not to exceed $189,250.27 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one Caterpillar model 313 GC 9 TB excavator with a 36-inch bucket and hydraulic thumb for the Parks and Recreation Department and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into contract with J.A. Riggs an amount not to exceed $119,990 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one Caterpillar Model 299 DXE DM2 skid steer for the Parks and Recreation Department and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with Deere and Company in amount not to exceed $91,332.84 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one John Deere Model 509 OE cab tractor with bucket and flex wing bush hog for the Parks and Recreation Department. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Jerry Pate Turf and Irrigation in amount not to exceed $102,783.91 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one Toro Greensmaster Triflex 3400 for the Parks and Recreation Department. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Jerry Pate Turf and Irrigation in an amount not to exceed $147,053.50 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one Toro Greensmaster 4700 for the Parks and Recreation Department and for other purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Doggett Freightliners of Arkansas in an amount not to exceed $159,390 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one Freightliner CA 126 DC tractor truck with lowboy trailer for the Public Works Department Street Operations Division and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Smart Auto Group in an amount not to exceed $171,080 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of 8 2023 Chevrolet Malibu for the Little Rock Fire and Housing and Neighborhood Programs Department and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Sasaki Associates Incorporated in amount not to exceed $745,000 for consulting services in preparation of the Downtown Little Rock Master Plan and for the purposes funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. A resolution is set July 11th, 2023 as the date of hearing on the request to abandon the east 15 feet of the Polk Street right-of-way located adjacent to Lot 7, Block 20, Newton's Addition in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter a contract with Safety National Casualty Corporation for excess workers' compensation coverage for 1 year effective July 1st, 2023, and for other purposes as amended. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Travelers Insurance Company in the amount of $1,607,314 for property and casualty insurance for city buildings and structures and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the grouped items.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and to establish a planned commercial development titled Parham Place Revised PCD located at 300 South Rodney Parham Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a revised planned office development titled Brandon House Event Center Revised POD located at 12,120 Colonel Glenn Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled West Canis Storage 2, PDC, located at 17,301 Canis Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned development office titled Life Skills for Youth PDO, located on the north side of Baseline Road, approximately 200 feet west of Stagecoach Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned development commercial titled Caliber Collision Auto Body PDC, located at 10,302 Colonel Glenn Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Revised Code Section 2-330.41 of 1988 to increase the time frame for completion of the development site plan and for other purposes. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas as structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial development titled Parham Place Revised PCD, located at 300 South Rodney Parham Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a revised planned office development titled Brandon House Event Center Revised POD, located at 12,120 Colonel Glenn Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled West Canis Storage 2, PDC, located west of 17,301 Canis Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned development office titled Life Skills for Youth, PDO, located on the north side of Baseline Road, approximately 200 feet west of Stagecoach Road. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned development commercial titled Caliber Collision Auto Body Shop PDC, located at 10,302 Colonel Glenn Road. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Revised Code Section 2-330.41 to increase the time frame for completion of the development site plan. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas as structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial development titled Parham Place Revised PCD, located at 300 South Rodney Parham Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a revised planned office development titled Brandon House Event Center Revised POD, located at 12,120 Colonel Glenn Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned development commercial titled West Canis Storage 2, PDC, located west of 17,301 Canis Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned development office titled Life Skills for Youth, PDO, located on the north side of Baseline Road, approximately 200 feet west of Stagecoach Road. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned development commercial titled Caliber Collision Auto Body Shop PDC located at 10,302 Colonel Glenn Road. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Revised Code Section 2-330.41 to increase the time frame for completion of the development site plan. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural, fire, and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency, third and final reading.
Members of the board, we've had 3 readings. Seeing no questions from the board, I do see a hand up from Director Adcock.
Oh, I got my question answered. Thank you.
Got your question answered, all right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Before we move on,
One emergency,
Mayor, we have an emergency clause on 21.
one.
there's emergency clause on item 21. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Before we move on to item 22, I do want to take this time just to recognize, while we just approved many, many different things and a lot of great things, I also wanted to highlight 2 things that we've been focused on as a city, particularly as it relates to homelessness. As you know, later this month, we'll be doing a groundbreaking on our micro homeless village that'll build somewhere around 100 tiny homes. We also know that's one solution that's going to take a quilt of solutions. We applaud what's going on with the Pulaski County Judge and what they're doing to help in different areas as well. But we also know we just recently approved the Vine and Village and what they're going to be doing in Wards 7 and 2. As we know, we've seen that being an area of interest, and want to 6 as well. I want to highlight the work from both directors Lewis and Warwick and Adcock, who have been, paying much attention to this, and to Mosaic Church and the great work they've been doing. And of course, our housing and neighborhood programs in this effort. And so I just want to make certain that, many times we're approving, we don't spend enough time talking about the things that we're actually getting done, and we're getting a lot of things done. So I wanted to highlight that. And then secondly, we continue to do a lot of great work as it relates to downtown Little Rock. This city has never had a master plan in totality completed for downtown Little Rock, and we just approved close to $800,000 for a downtown master plan that's really going to set the vision for our downtown area for the next few decades. And I think that's something that we have to highlight, the great work that we all are playing a role with that, alongside our Downtown Little Rock Partnership, as well as what this board also recently approved in the Downtown Ambassadors Program. So I wanted to make certain that we highlight those things that we continue to lead on as a city, as we continue to grow forward as a city. That being stated, we want to transition now to item 22. Looks like
Mayor, I think I had my hand up. Is it not showing?
it's not. I'm looking.
Yes.
I got you now.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I just want to use your point about downtown development, downtown partnerships, and what we're doing downtown, and use it as a segue to your comments about our concerns about the homelessness. I think there's a number of people who are incorrectly believing that we're more concerned with the site of homelessness than the actual homelessness itself. And I think at one point there was a big discussion about the site of homeless people in the River Market, and we had this huge conversation, huge discussion. And whenever we talk about it, we spend a lot more time talking about the visibility of them rather than those things that are causing them to be homeless, whether it's mental health, substance abuse, substance use, unemployment, underemployment, a host of factors that I think the brilliant minds around this table can figure out a proactive way to put something in place to help engage those homeless people and prevent future homelessness. So I think we need to make sure that the community knows that we are really, really concerned about the plight of the homeless, not just the appearance and the sight of homeless people. And I think many times, Mayor, in comments I've heard from people in our community, they incorrectly think that we're more concerned with people just seeing them than them actually suffering from homelessness. So I just wanted to make that point about our work with homeless and our concern about the homeless population.
Oh, great point. Thank you for your leadership, Director Richardson. We'll now transition to item number 22. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the item.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas to provide for the modifications of various procedures and definitions and for the purposes, first reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, second reading.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas to provide for the modifications of various procedures and definitions, second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it, third reading.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas to provide for the modifications of various procedures and definitions, third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. We'll now go to the agenda cards. I believe we have 12 cards here today. And I think at the beginning, Madam Clerk, what we'll do is, we'll just Wesley Petrus. And what we'll probably do, we'll give equal time to the fors and against. I think we could probably get 50-50. And so what we'll try to do is 20 minutes for the fors and 20 minutes for the against. No more than 20 minutes. So you don't have to use it all. Before we get started, Director.
Is Jamie the one that's in charge of?
Yes.
Can he give an overview before we start of what he thinks we're saying? So when they're talking, they're going to be saying things either for or against what he's saying. So it would be helpful for me to hear what he thinks we're proposing. And then is that possible?
Yes, it's possible. Jamie, if it could be very brief, I think that's what we had. Yeah, he's coming. Jamie. Jamie, if you'll give a very brief overview like you did last week.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. Last week, we had sent out a summary for what has changed since the Planning Commission and the ordinance. So one, I would like to kind of go through that summary. Essentially, when the Planning Commission looked at it, we originally had 2 different types of short-term rentals, STR1 and STR2. STR1 was the owner-occupied rental. STR2 is non-owner occupied rental. Started that with the draft to the Planning Commission. The process for approval was, and is today, the recommendation presented to the Planning Commission is that a STR1 or owner occupied was going to be some type of conditional use permit or special use permit. Special use permit was the one that ties it to the property. So whenever ownership changes hand, the SUP would go away. The STR2 is a planned development process. And that is a kind of akin to what we have currently without this ordinance being adopted. That's what we have now. We call it a bed and breakfast. That's typically what we'd call like owner occupied type scenario. And then the rest of them is a planned development type. So the whole process was to combine what we would believe now we're getting short-term rentals, kind of revamp our bed and breakfast code and combine the 2 into one, because that's what we're talking about, to try to align with what the rest of inside the state and everywhere else is seeing. And also to kind of put minimum design standards that are on there for life safety issues, parking plans, because there are areas within our city that short-term rentals are being done. Currently that the buildings were not built, the homes were not built to really have on-site parking. They are meant to be parked on the roadway. So we wanted to make sure that we took that into consideration. And then we also wanted to make sure that we was covering ourselves as a city municipality in the inspection of it. So a yearly inspection needed to take place for life safety issues like smoke alarms, fire detector, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide, fire extinguishers, those types of aspects into short-term rentals, because we do believe they are a commercial entity. They're looking to make money in that. It's not a long-term rental over 30 days. So just in that summary that I sent out, some of the changes that went, the ones that you saw originally was the Planning Commission wanted to combine the two into just one special use permit for all short-term rentals, regardless of whether it was owner occupied or not. So in the ordinance that is before you today, we have separated those out by request of the public and also the board. One of the things that come out through the Planning Commission was just a redefinition of what owner occupied is in the ordinance. So we increased that. There was some valid points made by some existing short-term rental property owners that what is the distance? Do we have to just live in the property? Can we be within so many feet and still be considered owner occupied? We thought that was a valid point to be made. So we listed it as a 1,500 foot radius. So if the owner of the business or the short-term rental lives within that 1,500 feet, then they would be considered owner occupied. We increased the number of what we'd call guest rooms from 5 to 9, but that would also, there's several properties, or at least one that we know of, that may have excess of 5. So we wanted to make sure that we put that in short-term rental, not necessarily make them a motel. The previous limit was up to 6, when 6 or more was considered a hotel. So that's not really the intent of this ordinance. We wanted to make sure it's very clear separation between a hotel and a short-term rental, a smaller type of use. We aligned the permitting process as far as cost on a per room basis for either short-term rental. So one of the items that was brought out in our meeting at Philander Smith was why are we treating them separately on the fee basis? And I thought that was a valid point that was made. So we felt like just on a per room basis, whether you choose to rent 1, 2, 3, whole home, whether your whole home is 3 guest rooms or 5, I think that really takes into consideration of both types of short-term rentals and also just on a number basis. So we're not looking to be heavy. This is not looking to be heavy-handed on the permit or the yearly fee. Is just looking to try to regulate so that we can get out and look out for life safety issues. We also wanted to make sure, and we brought it forward to this ordinance of what the Planning Commission saw as just incentives of being an historic district, trying to revamp the historic home. And also, if you're picking up a property that's sitting and the house that is sitting on our UV list, to try to get some incentives for that. And then I think the last one is that it's changed from the time that the Planning Commission heard it to now is the setting of a cap. And what we did there is there were several people that we've heard comments from I'm sure that y'all have emails that we don't really want any to none in our neighborhood, talking about caps of the municipalities. And the caps kind of changed in other municipalities. Some set it at 1% of the residential market, others 2% of the residential market. So where that number come from, and that's been a question raised, is we looked at the dominant area of where the short-term rentals were happening. The more you go out west, think of around the Midtown areas where a lot of the covenants and restrictions and subdivisions started to be more common and current today and really restrictive on commercial uses, which this would be. And so more out west, and I've explained that, the western subdivisions, they would have covenants and restrictions that would limit the commercial use where more of Midtown further east would not. So you kind of see that as a dominant area where short-term rentals are coming up. So we kind of looked at that, and we saw that in that area, they were roughly around 49,000 residential. And we took, there's areas of Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4 that were in that area. And so it come up to like 49,000 residential units. And so we took 1% of that, which set it at 490, so we rounded up to 500. Currently, as a snapshot, and I've looked at several snapshots through Airbnb rental website, and ones on the market range 200, 300 number at any given point in time in the area. It may go up a little bit based on the season. But we believe for just an initial start that number is a valid number. That's just a policy decision that can be looked at a later date if that number seems too low at a point in time. So with that, I can answer any questions that the board may have, and y'all can proceed with hearing anybody that's in opposition or for the ordinance.
Thank you. Director Richardson, your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jamie, real quick question. I heard you make reference to bed and breakfasts. Are we allowed to have non-owner occupied bed and breakfasts?
Currently, as it stands, no. The bed and breakfast intent was somebody was living at the residence. That's the way that the original ordinance was written.
What are the penalties when we find out we have those in operation? How do we enforce that? Because I think I know of a few that are not owner occupied. I've had meetings at a couple of them, and what are the ramifications and repercussions that those people are facing, and what enforcement mechanism, Bruce or Mayor, do we have in place to address that? I think that's a huge gap that I've seen since I've been on this board with respect to us addressing this from a policy standpoint.
Well, currently the enforcement would be through zoning. For notification, we provide them notice they are operating not in their zoning. So we'd investigate the zoning of the property, whether it's in a R2 or a commercial or industrial type zone. And then if they are not zoned, which I'm assuming that they're not, then they would be noticed and said, you have 7 days to remedy, which that means that they would apply for the zoning and go through the process. That's part of seeking the remedy. And then we would hold off enforcement until it went through the proper procedure. If it is, they're not living there, then to us, that would be a plan development. So the procedure currently would be through the Planning Commission and then to the board for ordinance adoption. If it's denied, then we will proceed with the enforcement through the court system. If approved, then it's approved and our file would be closed at that time. So we have that now. Typically, they've been more complaint driven than they've been us going out and seeking them type of scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have, I believe, 12.
I had my hand up, please.
I didn't see your hand up. Sorry about that, Director Echo.
Yes. Jamie, if there is one in a neighborhood and it becomes a problem to the neighborhood, can you address in the ordinance how they would find someone to take care of that?
Yes, there is an enforcement section in our ordinance, and if I'll scroll down to it, I want to kind of read some of that out of there. So somebody might have questions about it. So it is essentially 3 times 3 verified complaints within a year. Then we would have the ability of adherence to these standards or other type of complaints. So let me explain that a little bit. That could be nuisance complaints that the police may have investigated through there for noise, other instances. So it's not by complaint, it's by confirmation of complaint. So we'd have to go investigate and see what did the police see. If it's other types of complaints, like a parking issues or some other standard issues, then we'd investigate that at that time. And then if found that it is substantiated, confirmed, then upon that, then we would have the ability to suspend the business license. There is a procedure within that they can appeal that suspension. That appeal goes to the Board of Adjustments. We treated it kind of like that process is what is in there now through a home occupation business. That is appealable to the Board of Adjustment. So we kept that same appeal at that level through the BOA to for our administrative judgment for that. And then there's also a time limit that once that's done, they cannot apply for a business license for up to a year at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Adcock. We have 12 agenda cards for this particular item. I know I previously said 20 minutes on each side. We'll start with the 4, which are only, I believe, 2, and then the remaining 10 are against. We'll try to, we'll start with, hopefully we can make certain everyone's heard within these 20 minutes. We'll start with the 2 that's for, and then we'll go straight to those that are against, since it's more against. Actually, I had previously, we'll start with the against, because I said Mr. Petrus had already made his way up. Mr. Petrus? My apologies.
How many did you say was for, Mayor? Or against, rather? I don't want to take up too much time.
There are 12 against, so.
I'm going to try not to take too much time.
Yeah, when we try if there's that many against, we know there's only a few different sides to the same story, so we want to try to keep it.
My name is Wesley Petrus. I have several STRs in Little Rock and North Little Rock. Been doing it for several years. I have several other people who's going to talk about some things that I'm going to skip over. I don't want to take too much time. So I just want to say, we're not against regulation. We are for regulation. The thing is, we don't want excessive, we want fair regulations at the same time. We need y'all's help. We need the city's help. We don't want our guests coming in and destroying our stuff. We're making our city bad, our neighbors mad. We don't want that. If there's a problem, I'm going to call the cops before y'all do. I promise you, if I hear something. I have cameras outside, and I don't want them destroying anything. So I'm going to be regulating my own property. I'm going to take care of my property. It's going to be taken care of better than long-term rentals. I promise you that, because everything we do in Airbnb and VRBO is based on our ratings. If we don't get good ratings, we're not going to stay in business. That's all it is to it. You have to have almost a perfect rating every night. Every guest you have to perfect rating. So it's going to be a self-regulated system. It always has been for the last 2 or 3 years. So we do want y'all support. A couple things I'm curious about is if I call the police myself, is that going to go against is that going to be one of the 3 per year? I'd like that to be added somewhere into the conversation or somewhere written to the ordinance. Secondly, is there any grandfather system? And third, I think the $500 per year inspection fee is a little steep. I think maybe $100, $150 is more fair compared to the houses are not that big. Y'all already, if we're going to do you already have all the regulations. If we're going to do, you have my house plan, everything's been verified, from day one. So I think $500 per year, I think it's a bit steep. So hopefully we can lower that some. The last thing I want to say is y'all already collecting taxes from Airbnb, and they automatically send it to y'all. That doesn't even come through us. So y'all have lost nothing over the last, I think, 8 months or more trying to, get this passed and work through all the systems. And y'all have already done something really well, your finance team, which is VRBO. You have to request them to send taxes to y'all, and y'all have done that. So y'all are still getting all the taxes already. So you haven't, by waiting this like 8 months, you haven't lost anything. So hopefully we can get some of these items taken care of and talk about them a little bit more, and listen to my the other short-term rental owners, and that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Petrus. Annette Shahid, if I'm reading it correctly. Thank you. I apologize. My eyes are failing me.
Mine too. I didn't think I'd be this fast. Thank you. That was very elegant, what you just said. And I just want to speak from the perspective of, as someone who owns I'm sorry, closer? Okay, pull it down.
She doesn't speak that loud, guys, so we have to just listen carefully. I know Annette, so
Yeah.
Annette, you may have to yell like you're on at a basketball game or something, because some of us old folks can't hear up here, and I know how low and cool and calm you talk, so.
Okay, I'll try to do better. As a resident of Little Rock all my life and homeowners, and my parents have been homeowners, I've spoken before how this is not really something new, having, you're saying short-term stays, but I've been saying it's the same thing as I went blank, a boarding house. And I am just trying to maintain the properties that I have been left. And as he eloquently said, I have very beautiful homes and I do not want them damaged. I do appreciate the Airbnb and all the rules they have. And I want my homes not to be destroyed. And so I keep them as neat as possible. At one time, I was a little too obsessive in cutting the grass, once a week. I have the smoke detectors. I have the fire extinguishers. I even have an exit sign. I have went way above board of what was ever asked of me before you even asked. And I just want to put it on your hearts that we want to keep our community beautiful. The people who have rented my Airbnb have been the Race from the Cure. They come in for races. The house is downtown. And they're blown away with the love that Little Rock has to show them. I've even got coupons for them to go to Loblolly's and other places, so it connects them with the community. And this is just another way to bring tourism to us. But please don't penalize the little bitty people and let us keep our homes, because sometimes that's the only way we can keep them is having a Airbnb. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, is it maybe Piggy? I'm reading correctly. Leah, on Sterling Drive, anyone on Sterling Drive?
Yeah, have them diverted.
Does anyone live on Sterling Drive that signed the card? You're not helping.
I heard Piggy.
I couldn't read it correctly. That's why I asked on the address. Do you live on Sterling Drive? All right. All right. Well, someone who will get to the end, and whoever said they signed one, that'll be them. All right. Jimmy Walker.
Hello, I'm actually for, I don't know if this was still on the panel for against, but I'm actually for the recommendations that.
You're for it, okay.
And so I'm basically just saying that it's fine, with Airbnb. I know they're saying they're caring for their things, but they don't realize that it affects the people that live in the neighborhood. I know I live in a historical neighborhood, and we have a house that's there that is currently Airbnb, and there's been several companies that occupied the residence. They knock on doors in our residence to listing, whether it's a satellite company, whether it's whatever type company that they represent. And we have an older neighborhood, and there are a lot of senior citizens, and they're fearful. I mean, we get knocks on the doors at night and everything else. I mean, there's just an overage. I'm not against people trying to make money. That's fine and dandy with this, but It's just that in areas where in certain areas, there just don't need to be Airbnb properties. And I'm not knocking what they're doing with their properties. They may be taking care of them, but you never know the people that come in their residence, whether they have, what kind of background they have, and they're walking the neighborhoods, and it affects a lot of our seniors. We have a lot of seniors that are fearful at night. And I know I get talked to quite often because I'm vocal and I'll ask somebody whatever. But I know that when I selected this area, the home that I live in, I did the research to find out that the crime rate was low. We want to keep it that way. You know, we've been now having break-ins, and just a couple of weeks ago, we had the front door bashed in, and we're not blaming that it's Airbnb being people or whatever, but what I am saying is that our neighbors and our seniors deserve to be peacefully and live peacefully. And I see it, and as I season in my age as well, but I know that one thing about it, our neighborhood, we want to keep it like it is. And, you know, if you want to take it elsewhere, then that's fine. But I do know in our neighborhood, we do have one house that's Airbnb, and it's not being, it may be kept up or whatever, but I'm saying the style of people that come in there from time to time are not welcome, basically. You know, they're not in a welcoming spirit. And so I just wanted to share that because, like I said, heck, our neighborhood's getting older, and we want to make sure that that's kept like it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Tiffany Miller.
Hello, I'm Tiffany Miller. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I have several Airbnb properties, and they're kind of a mix or an eclectic mix of properties. Some are lower end and some are very high end. But I've been a host for over a year now, and so I'm really good at selecting my guests and screening them. Before that, I was a long-term rental landlord for a long time. In fact, I still have some long-term rentals. Airbnb, I think, fits better into some places, and it's easier to get rid of bad guests. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but when you have a rental, they're usually there for a year. And if they're all nice up front in the beginning, and they get bad very quick, but they get to stay the whole time. If we have a bad Vrbo or Airbnb guest, like, they're out. Like, I look on my camera, I'm calling them, I'm messaging them, and we're pulling up, and police are getting called to come. So I agree, like the other Airbnb hosts, when we call, like when you do your new regulations, please don't put our calls to the police in there, because we're trying to keep the neighborhoods safe and keep it, we actually improve neighborhoods a lot of times, because the properties that we buy, when we start painting and cleaning up our house that we buy, then everybody else wants to start fixing up their yard and fixing up their house. And I do think we need to be grandfathered in. I think that fee is too high. We spend a lot of money to keep everything top notch. And I don't think we need to have a cap on the short-term rentals. And the reason I say that is because just like any business, like businesses, they're very good at regulating themselves. The economy is good at that. And, you know, if there's 5 of them in a row or 5 of them on the street, one of those businesses is going to fail, or either if it's really a good need or in a good spot, they're going to stay operational. But we wouldn't need a cap or a limit on that. The other thing, like, again, with the regulations, we don't need, I don't think it's owners of properties, we don't need regulations on like smoke detectors and alarms. Like, most homeowners have that. To have insurance, you have to have a smoke detector, you have to have a fire extinguisher, like pretty common sense stuff, like the windows have to open and close. Anybody who doesn't have those type of things, they get bad reviews. If it's not a safe place, whoever pays $100 a night, they're going to put in your review. And if you get below a 4 on a scale of 1 to 4, Airbnb's like messaging you, calling you, like, what's going on? Like, the guest didn't give you a 5-star. What's the problem? Like, you need to look at revising some stuff. Like, I actually get a text like that sometimes. Like, hey, they only gave you 4.5. Like, what's going on? So please be considerate that we are trying our best every day. Being a short-term rental host is it's like a full-time job. Like, we're constantly trying to keep up our properties. We're constantly trying to keep it top-notch. We're constantly improving it. And we're trying to be good neighbors. We talk to our neighbors, the ones that want to talk to us, but we leave an open door. We give them our phone numbers. We give them, we help them sometimes. I've cut people's yards next to my short-term rental because I want it to look nice. Like, stuff like that, we try. We try to be good neighbors and good hosts. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Elena?
Hello, it's Petruchina. So my name is Elena Petruchina and I operate an Airbnb. And when just have a couple of comments, I do agree that the regulations are necessary and would be beneficial for the owners in the neighborhood and the overall operations of the Airbnbs. Now, however, when I hear talk about the Airbnbs, and when it seems that when a property is zoned as residential, then we have to do permits, we have to do all these things, and there are several commercial properties or dual-use properties that operate Airbnbs. Now, would these rules apply to them? Like, this is my question as I have as far as to the ordinance or to the proposed. So I feel like that the proposed rules are not clear and need some work. Also, there is no description of what is the process of application, what's going to be required. How's the equity is going to be established in the process? Because not everyone can afford to pay $500. Yes, some rentals are operating full-time. Maybe somebody operates the rental when they need to, as their schedule allows, or as a life has demands on us. This might be a supplemental income. The Airbnb seems to be a great way to benefit local business owners. And I think this needs to be taken into account when these licenses are issued. Issued. And again, I'd like to recommend and suggest to benefit people who live here, the property owners who live here. Now, not maybe necessarily within 1,500 feet, but in Little Rock. There's multiple corporations who are buying up properties and turning them into Airbnbs. So all of that income goes out of state immediately. All of our income stays right here, benefiting the tourism and local economy. So I think all of those things need to be also taken on consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Powell?
Good evening, directors, Mayor Scott, Vice Mayor. Appreciate y'all letting us speak today. I'm president of the University Park Neighborhood Association, and as I've stated at previous meetings and at multiple emails, we are not against short-term rentals. We just firmly believe that absentee landlords should not be allowed in areas that are zoned residential unless the neighborhood has agreed that it's okay. Many neighborhoods are okay, but some are not. It's more difficult. We wanted so much to fully support this ordinance. While it is an improvement that STR1s and STR2s have different processes, if I understand it correctly, it still puts a burden on the community that we have to physically go before the Planning Commission and also before the City Board if we object. Since an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, if it's already known that a particular neighborhood does not desire the STR2s, will there be a way to prevent the situation before it comes to pass. I would like to see that incorporated in the regulation. And why no fines if there are violations? We're fined for parking tickets and any other type of citation. I know that even though there are exceptions to the annual fees, fees are an area of concern for STR owners. So why not fine the folks, the owners who are having violations instead of having such a large fee? Another question, I still didn't quite understand why there was an increase of 5 to 9, up to 9 guest rooms. That sounds like 18 people in one house because 2 people per bedroom. That's a lot of people in one house for any neighborhood. A lot of unknown people and a lot of cars. The regulation says no parties, but 18 people, that sounds like a party to me. I could see also parking being a big concern with that number of guest rooms. It would make it difficult for those who walk in the neighborhood for exercise. Our neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks, and many in Little Rock are in that situation. General traffic concerns. We've had recently someone staying at the short-term rental, and it was constantly racing up and down our streets very loudly. And also, it would make it difficult for emergency vehicles if you have all these parking issues, these cars blocking the streets. Neighborhood impact should definitely be a major consideration for our city leaders. As your residents, as a group, we've invested more in the city of Little Rock than any other entity. We are depending on you to put in place an ordinance that clarifies things for STR owners and protects neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Crawford.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us an opportunity to present our opinion on this ordinance. My name is Paul Crawford. I live in the neighborhood of Hillcrest, which, as many of you know, have some historic older homes that do not typically have a lot of parking around them. We have a considerable amount of STRs in our neighborhood, many of which are nice businesses and nice homes. They come in and they fix them up. And that is not my concern. My bigger concern is what happens when these facilities ask to have their zoning changed. It's not very clear in the ordinance that where it states that a planned zoning district will be established for the facility. And that could open up the can of worms because a planned zoning district could be a commercial use, it could be a residential use, it could be an office use. And while that individual might be using it for a short-term rental at the time, they may sell that facility and that use or zoning structure remains with that facility. Someone could come in and turn it into a commercial business. That could be an office. It could be something that's in the middle of a residential area, and that's problematic because most of these structures are in heavily residential areas. I would prefer to see the ordinance specifically state that the short-term rentals, particularly STR2s, would be classified for being only a PDRs, where it still has that residential classification versus the opportunity for it to become a PDC or a planned commercial development. And that is our biggest concern. I personally and my family have stayed at many short-term rentals, both in the United States and abroad. They provide a wonderful use for many people. I don't have a problem with the intent of a short-term rental. And I applaud the board and the city for trying to come up with an ordinance to address these issues. And I hopefully that you would consider my request to have it specifically state that the zoning can only be a PDR and not any other usage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Charlotte Crawford.
Good evening. My name is Charlotte Crawford. I'm a resident of Little Rock. You got both my husband and myself tonight. We both looked at the ordinance and had different takeaways from it. I'm here, as my husband expressed, we're not opposed to short-term rentals. They're great. We use them. We've enjoyed them. I'm here to talk about the density of short-term rentals as defined in the ordinance. And while the draft ordinance for short-term rentals includes a cap of 500 units within the city, it's the density concentration of short-term rentals within a smaller geographical area that remains the biggest concern. It is my hope that this detail will be addressed in the ordinance before it's finalized with a vote. As written, the draft ordinance cap of having 500 short-term rentals in Little Rock would theoretically work if all the short-term rentals were evenly spread out throughout the city. But the reality is that these short-term rentals are concentrated and in higher density clumps in specific areas. In its current draft form, this ordinance would allow any house to be completely surrounded by short-term rentals. And so my question to all of you is, what consideration does this draft ordinance give to those homeowners who choose to live in Little Rock, who call Little Rock home and don't want to be surrounded by short-term rentals on all four sides? What recourse would a homeowner have in such a case? In looking at the short-term rental ordinance, I don't see anything that clarifies that or addresses that. And you see, that's the problem. I strongly urge you to add a geographical density clause that limits the amount of short-term rental within a specific geographical area before voting to accept it as is. It's an action that matters for maintaining a sense of community, which contributes to the benefits of living here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bobby Matthews.
All right. Hello, City Board. Thank you for your time. My main goal, I am asking for more certainty. Not all STRs are the same, and this could be life-changing in a negative way. PZDs are a problem, and there has to be a better way in regards to certainty. Even if you're for or against STRs, please consider those that might be collateral damage if this ordinance is passed tonight. In my opinion, this draft ordinance will unintentionally harm underserved neighborhoods. I'm an advocate of the historic Central High neighborhood. I live there. Also love the historic Dunbar neighborhood. Help those that are willing to convert vacant properties back to contributing towards the housing stock of Little Rock. There are neighborhoods in the city that do not share the astronomical comps that those in the Heights are used to. South of 630, we need every advantage possible. We're surrounded by vacant lots and condemned unsafe vacant properties. You know, the ones with the red stickers saying no one is allowed to actually live in them. It's kind of scary to think that the biggest risk for me in rehabilitating vacant properties, the biggest risk is city policy. Please take that into consideration. The priorities driving this draft ordinance are missing the mark. I could be wrong, but a planning ordinance should plan for the future. This does not do that. For whatever reason, it's punitive for hosts. I've been attending these public meetings aimed at discussing this ordinance for years now. I've been to the libraries, neighborhood gatherings, the last one at Philander Smith. I've actually been here a few times and where they were postponed many times. Being on the citizen side of this draft ordinance discussion, I have to admit, I feel like something's missing from this entire process. If this is really about life safety issues, if it's really about curbing parties at STRs, then one might think you would need someone that is familiar with how things are ran with STRs. You need contributions from hosts, more specifically, the good actors that we want all hosts to take after. To me, this is kind of a no-brainer. Since I've been suggesting this for years now, I have to admit that I'm a little paranoid that the city does not have my best interest at heart. Please collect data. Please formulate a group of individuals that can brainstorm how to best implement an ordinance that works for the city of Little Rock. Not an ordinance that works for tourist destinations like Nashville, New Orleans, or like. There's no requirement that says the planning commission needs to, I'm gonna skip that part. I'm in the camp that believe we do need an ordinance, but I'm telling you, this is not it. This draft falls short on several levels. A tangent but relevant item is to look at enforcement issues. Long-term rental inspection programs lack serious enforcement. Look at those impacted by the Chateau within the last few months. Large operators neglecting their property, neglecting tenants for years. That's a life safety issue. And even North Little Rock passed the STR ordinance, and I believe they're having a big issue enforcing with out-of-state owners themselves. Has this been thought about? Or are we about to drive off the same cliff? If history is the lesson, I would venture to guess we are. A large portion of this ordinance is about annual inspections. Long-term rental inspection program is less than effective, especially if you look at the long-term aspect of it that had to be scaled back, like I think it was 2019 or.
And sir, just to let you know that the against side's time is up. I want you to finish your sentence because we got to give some time to the for side as well.
Yes, sir. We did have someone on the for speak on our side too.
We know how many minutes are left for the for side.
Some important pieces I like to put in perspective. This draft is wanting to cap STRs to 500. If you look at the number of red tag unsafe vacant properties, it's right above the 500 mark. And that's just the red tag properties. There are many more vacant properties just waiting for the red tag. And as far as magnitude, if there are more vacant properties rotting around the city and you want fewer STR rentals, I feel like that kind of sends the wrong message. Another big point I would like, if I need to shorten my part, increase the number of those investing in the neighborhoods by making the distance from 1,500 feet to the size of a typical neighborhood, about 1 to 2 miles. We should be sticking up for Little Rock owners, not absentee owners. Please slant this ordinance in the direction of those that live in the neighborhood. That's something I think a planning ordinance should do. Link it to residency or maybe a homestead tax. Another point I'd like to say is like folks that are older, I don't want to say an age, but give them a break and allow them to earn some income if they're retired and need some extra income. The other big, like, I got to cut this short. Please bring some hosts to the table and have a coordinated effort to make a better planning ordinance. This falls pretty short. Thank you.
Thank you. The time is up on the against side. I do believe Miss Angie, how many do we have on the for side? Time? 16 minutes and 48 seconds on the for side. On the for side, I want to go back to Gotcha. Is it Lee Piggy? Leah, Lee, Sterling Drive. Do you know who that is, Ms. Powell?
Mr. Pigg declined to speak. He was deferring his time to the others who were against.
Oh, so he was against, he wasn't. Okay, awesome. All right. That being said, we don't have any more on the for, and they have allotted time. I do want to recognize just one second. So at the beginning, we gave an allotment of time, 20 minutes for, 20 minutes against. And so that allotment of time is complete. We had 12 against and only 1 for. And I guess the second one that we think is for, that was actually against. What I do want to do is recognize 2 names who are also against. Again, there are 12 that are against, have already spoken, I believe, of that standpoint. Amia Foreman, if you'll just come briefly, and again, I want to make certain everyone else that time is a lot. I want to just give you a few brief moments, and then Angela Matthews, a few brief moments, and then we're gonna, again, we gave them an allotment of time, equal time, for 20 minutes for against, 20 minutes for. There's 16 minutes for. There's not a lot of people left, so we'll give some grace on the against, but just if we would, please keep it brief.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Thank you for allowing all of us to speak.
Speaker.
Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for letting all of us speak, both the for and the against side. My name is Maya Foreman, and I am an Airbnb superhost, and I am also one of the city's daughters. And I'm not going to get emotional, but my property was originally purchased from my mother. She had congestive heart failure. She got sick, and she had to come stay with me and my husband. So, in order to continue to pay for our bills, because as a real estate broker, that is a commission-based business. If you're not buying, selling, investing in properties or helping people do that, you don't have an income, but you still have bills. So by taking my mother's home, changing it to a short-term rental, that allowed me to spend her last 2 years of life providing end-of-life care. And I don't know if any of you plan on getting old and dying. It makes a difference when you have somebody that is there, that cares, that can take you to your appointments, make sure you get your bath, make sure your clothes are clean and your food is done. That is something that Airbnb has allowed me to do that just buying, selling, and investing in real estate couldn't do, because I couldn't do that. It's a commission-based business, so I had to shift to Airbnb. With regards to my properties, I'm there every 2 weeks to make sure the grass is cut. There's cameras on the property. Drive by once a week to make sure that the trash is put out. I have not been informed of anything negative directly, other than 2 young ladies that felt comfortable enough in the community to sunbathe in the front yard, oh my God, and 1 person jogging in the neighborhood without a shirt on. Those were the complaints that I received from my Airbnb. There weren't any parties. I have been able to introduce people who have stayed in my Airbnb that was my mother's home. I've been able to keep my mother's home, which means something. I mean, I was able to buy my mother a home. She never got to live in it, but I was able to do that and meet people all around the world and share Little Rock with them. I get to show them the different community restaurants and the different small businesses like mine that you traditionally don't get exposed to. I get to share with them hot springs, talk about bathhouses and things like that. So I am not opposed to all of the regulations. I just want a seat at the table, whether it be with the board and with people who are against it or for it, because there is a happy medium that can be made. But putting all the fees is definitely not the way to go, because with all of these fees, it makes it difficult to earn an income when you're in a situation. And my husband has senior parents who are 80. We're going to eventually have to move them in too. So those are the benefits that people don't think about when they're making these plans and decisions that affect the lives of others, is sometimes you need that money. And you do care about your community, and you do care about your neighbors, but you care about your family too. And there is a happy medium that can be made. So that's all that I wanted to say about that.
Thank you. Miss Angela Matthews.
Hello, I'll try to be quick. I live in the Central High neighborhood. Me and my husband, Bobby, who you just met, like to fix up these sad houses, these vacant houses that are currently sitting in our neighborhood and not being used. This is what we do. Those are UV properties, vacant properties. There's no shortage of them in Central High and Dunbar. Short-term rentals allow us a tool to make these projects financially feasible. I mean, we have actually, if you guys have driven down Chester Street recently at the corner of Bussey and Chester, you might have noticed that there are like 4 houses, one of which was about to fall down. We've actually been able to save those houses with the plan to convert them to short-term rentals. So we did all of that with the expectation that we would be allowed to short-term rent them because we need that to make these numbers work. So the fact that the city is now thinking about making it harder or impossible for us to do this is terrifying as someone who invests in these communities. This is not what we want to do as a city. We want to encourage people to invest in these neighborhoods. And I think, as Bobby said, sometimes the biggest risk we have in our investments is the city itself, and that's not where we want to be. I'm not opposed to regulation. In fact, I think it could potentially be good. This is not it. This regulation doesn't do any of the things we're actually trying to accomplish. This was something we've cobbled together from a variety of cities that are actually tourist destinations. It doesn't actually take into account the problems that we have with these short-term rentals. As a host, I can tell you the ones that are going to be problematic. They're the ones that have a high number of occupants, multiple people crammed in a bedroom. Some people are putting like 2 queen beds in every bedroom. So you got a 3-bedroom house that all of a sudden sleeps 14 people when you throw in 2 sofa beds. This doesn't address that at all. It's not what we're actually concerned about. Party houses. I think that's what's happening in a lot of these neighborhoods, but this doesn't address that. What this does is makes it harder on me as an investor and me as a neighbor to improve my community. And you guys, if you pass this, you're going to tie my hands behind my back. All of these great hosts that you have that are helping contribute to the city of Little Rock, it's going to be harder for them to do what it is they do. But do you know who it's not going to impact? Those out-of-state people that are putting together these party houses who don't care about our neighborhoods. Because regardless of what Jamie Collins says, he can't enforce this against out-of-state owners. We've seen this problem pop up in respect to our unsafe vacant properties. I know this because many of you have sat through our neighborhood meetings, and the one issue that comes out is out-of-state owners. We can't do anything with them because we can't get good service on them. We can't, as an attorney, you can't assert jurisdiction over them because they don't live here. And these are the people we need to be targeting, but that's not who this regulation deals with, and it doesn't address the actual issues. So what I would ask is that you actually bring hosts to the table. All of us can tell you what it is that you need to do to protect these neighborhoods and make sure that people that are coming in and having these short-term rentals are doing what's best for our neighborhood. So we've continued to offer many, many times to come to the table and help make this better, but no one ever takes us up on this. We would love to have that opportunity. So all I'm asking is that you actually take us up on it, put together a task force, whatever it takes, and let's actually do something that will benefit the city and benefit the hosts that are trying to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Matthews. We've now heard from all those that are for and those that are against. Director Phillips, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some, well, first of all, let me say thank you to our constituents for being here and being patient and participating in this process. I think this is important. There are a few things that I heard in the comments that I want to make sure I understand correctly so we can get Director Collins back, Mayor, to answer a few questions.
Director Collins.
Thank you, Director Collins. Just want to get some clarity on a couple of things. Someone mentioned essentially the grandfather clause, and I know in the ordinance we identify pre-existing type 1s and type 2s. I'm unclear when I read the ordinance whether the pre-existing type 2, which means they already went through the process and been approved by this board has to go back through the process again. Can you give clarity on that?
Yes, Director Phillips, what it is anything that has been previously adopted by the board as an ordinance for a planned development or bed and breakfast is still okay. They have their zoning, they can operate. So this does not affect anything that has come before this board and got their planned development or before the Planning Commission as a bed and breakfast to get their special use permit prior to adoption of this ordinance.
So are they included in the 500 cap or not?
They still would be included in the cap. They would be part of the number.
Okay, so they still would have to go and get the license.
Yes, they would have to get the license, and they'd have to have the inspections done yearly, but they would not go through the rezoning process.
Okay, wanted clarity on that. Thank you. Secondly, a couple of folks mentioned questions about calls to the police and whether that will be essentially held against them if the owner is calling the police. Can you address that?
Yes, right now there is no distinction whether it's adjacent property owners or renters, or if it's the individual that owns it. If the police is called, it is just on a per incident basis. It does not distinguish between owner calling on an incident they see the police or anybody else.
And just for clarity,
it is investigated, and then if it's substantiated or confirmed, so it would be part of that process.
and for those who may not be in the details like you are, Director Collins, what's that number, the number of calls before there is any type of?
Well, it's not based on the number of calls, Director. It's based on the number of confirmed incidences.
And that's what I'm getting at.
And that is 3. And at 3, then the potential that they could have their business license revoked at staff level, director level. I would have the authority to do that. And then they have an appeal process for administrative functions to appeal it to the Board of Adjustments.
And I think you kind of mentioned this earlier during your brief remarks, but there was also a question about what happens if the owner of a type 2 decides to sell this property and is now zoned as a PZD, excuse me. What happens in that situation? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, both of them. That's why we chose a special use permit and a planned development. Is when we process it, it can be tied to several things. All of them will be tied to the property owner, the actual use. So in the selling of the land, if somebody decides to sell their property 5 years after obtaining it, then that special use permit and also a planned development for both STR1s and STR2s go away with the owner going away. They would have to come back through the process, so it does not continue on.
And there's been some conversation about the role of neighborhoods and their ability to be involved in this process. Is there anything in this ordinance that prohibits a neighborhood from amending their bill of assurances to allow or disallow these type of uses?
No, there is nothing in this ordinance that would inhibit any property owner association enacting covenants and restrictions, whether it's a new one or an existing one.
Okay. Thank you, Director Collins. That's all I have for him, Mayor. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some follow-up questions for Mr. Collins, please. And Mr. Collins, a couple of people have made the allegation that you just pulled something from this ordinance and pulled something from that ordinance and you stuck it all together and you presented us with this. Could you tell us how long that you and your staff have actually worked on this and what sort of research you did to come up with this particular ordinance?
Yeah, the time spent on this has been over 2.5 years in the process from an initial report that we made. And we did, at that time, we presented other municipalities in the state and also out of the state of what short-term rentals regulations look like to the policymakers, to let y'all see what was happening and where we could go, and we were directed to proceed with looking at it further. We did not take outside ordinances in its entirety. As I explained, we actually took them for review and looked at them, but we also modified our own. We had a bed and breakfast code in place, ordinance already adopted by the board. And we were already processing what we would deem now SDR2s as planned development. So it's not a new process that we enacted. We were trying to take an existing one that has been enacted for decades in our zoning and try to mend it to adhere to some of the stuff that we're seeing today, to try to regulate those. And people they were talking today about the life safety aspects and other avenues as a multifamily, but that's not what this ordinance was drafted for. This ordinance was drafted specifically for short term, and I was tasked with a way to use city staff to do that, and also to try to amend that and recoup some of those costs that we have. The fee that's adopted does not recoup the costs of what it would cost for city staff to do this. It is to assist and help to do the inspections. People don't realize that both costs is a fire marshal inspection and a building official inspection, or their representatives yearly, and is based on a per room basis, not a whole home basis. So if you just have a 3 guest room or bedroom stay, then that's what it's based on. It's not based on the entire house. So it could be less than the 500. It's just dependent upon that. So we did look at others. We did look at the Nashvilles. No, we are not Nashville. They are more lenient in their short-term rentals, or the Gulf Coast. We tried to take something that was already in place that has been adopted, and try to amend it in a way that would accomplish the goals that the board had directed.
One of the questions that Director Phillips asked that I would like you to follow up on, he asked about neighborhoods having more say-so, and one of the speakers tonight wanted more influence, I guess, if you will, from the neighborhood to be able to say, we don't want a short-term rental. And I believe you said that certain neighborhoods that do have like maybe a POA or something like that, they could have more say-so than, like I have a neighborhood in Ward 3 that would probably be happy if there were no short-term rentals in that particular neighborhood, but they don't have a POA, and so they're probably not going to be able to have the same say-so that other neighborhoods have. Is that correct? That have a POA or restrictive covenants?
Well, their say-so would still be, this ordinance provides a public forum, either STR. I do believe that any change of use of property needs to be heard publicly. So whether it's a planning commission or the planning commission and the board process, that's still a public hearing that voices can be heard. Changes do happen on properties sold over time. So the same residences that may be for a short-term rentals in the area may not be for 10 years from now, because of the dynamics have changed in the area. The ownership has changed in the area. But a neighborhood can voice their opinion, whether even if they form a neighborhood association. It's just the restriction of, it's that private agreement is what I'm actually talking about. Getting the voices heard, they can get it heard now. And we did. We provided the Planning Commission with every email that we received from, whether it's a neighborhood association to individuals. Well, we provided that same to the board for everybody to see what those comments were. But in regards to being the same as a POA, that may be a newer subdivision, that's a little bit harder to do in an older subdivision in your area, because to set one up, and Mr. Carpenter may be able to speak more for that, but to set that up, that's really a private agreement with the entities you're wanting to set that up with. And so it would have to be, I believe, 100% of the area, all property owners that looking to enact that agreement or that POA, which is definitely easier when it's a brand new subdivision and every individual lot owner is buying in. It would be a lot harder with a separate neighborhood that doesn't have that type of scenario to get that enacted. But I am not an expert on that. I just know that to do that, that is a private agreement, and I don't know that if everybody's in agreement that that could actually process.
It's not necessarily everybody's in agreement. Each bill of assurance or each restrictive covenant in a deed, we typically set that out. I have seen them where it's a majority of the property owners. I've seen them where it's a 2/3 majority of the property owners. So that would be that aspect. But one thing that goes along with this is, in conjunction with this, we haven't heard anything. There could be 3 bedrooms and 2 or 3 beds in each one of those, and therefore now you've got 18 people in a house. There is a protection against that because these houses, if they're used for an Airbnb, have to comply with our fire code. And the fire marshal is going to say how many people can stay there. And that's going to be an aspect of being able to get the permit. And Mr. Collins has already set up, if this should pass, the concept, and he may have set up the actual methodology to nobody gets a permit until we know that everybody that they've got to have sign off has signed off. So they own the property. We know that. The fire marshal has inspected. The building inspector has inspected. We've got the local ownership involved so that we can enforce the matter. I mean, those are things that will deal with some of the problems that you heard tonight.
Director Richardson, then Director Wyatt.
Ex-
Oh, you're still, I'm sorry.
Not finished. I have another question.
Oh,
Sorry. Thank you. Mr. Collins, you addressed the cap in your remarks, and some of the emails we got, or at least some of the emails I got, people seem to think that you pulled that number out of the air, and you addressed that earlier in your remarks that you did not pull it out of the air. But to your knowledge, do a lot of our other cities that have passed such an ordinance or short-term rentals, is that a fairly common thing to have a cap?
Yes, and the ones that we had seen, they are providing the caps for it, which would dominate would be the Fayetteville, North Little Rock. I think Hot Springs may have the most restrictive cap on their short-term rentals. And I believe they actually are looking at revising that. I don't know if they have passed it or not, but I know that they looked at it, and that was one of the statements that I made, that we did put that number in there. I told you the procedures that we use to do so, but that is also a policy that can be determined at a later date if that number needs to change. That is the board's decision to do, to look at it, and staff's to present the facts to the board on exactly where we're at and what's happening with that number.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, just one more comment before I yield. I mean, I've looked at this for about 5 years, starting at a National League of Cities workshop conference. I think it was 5 years ago. Went to a workshop, thought this will be kind of something light to attend. I thought there was going to be a fight break out in the workshop. Went to another National League of Cities workshop last year in Kansas City. Have spoken to people from all over the country. And the only reason I bring that up is because a couple of colleagues have said, well, why don't we keep working on it until we get it perfect? And in my experience of talking to people from all over the country, not one person has told me that they have a perfect ordinance. Because this is sort of a new area that is in flux. I did text with some of our peers in other cities today, and they're continuing to amend their ordinances. So I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect ordinance, but we have continued to kick this can down the road. There are things in here that I don't like. that are too restrictive or not restrictive enough. And typically that's a fairly good thing because it means it's a compromise. Y'all have worked hard on this over the years, and thank you for your continuing diligence to bring something forward.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jamie, thank you and your staff for your work on this. I want to use Director Phillips' comments about repeated criminal acts as a segue to a question for our city attorney. Tom, let me use CAP in another way. If we have documented evidence of criminal activity in one particular place, are these places eligible to be placed in our CAP program, our criminal abatement program?
Yes.
They can be?
Yes, and depending upon the type of offenses that are committed there, if they're drug offenses or drug selling offenses or the making of methamphetamine types of things, we can end up taking the house.
We could actually take it so they can be put in our criminal abatement program. So that's another CAP where we can use CAP in a different way. But I think Antoine's comments about the repeated documented criminal acts is another mechanism, I think, of enforcement that we have in place that if we have that ability to do that, that's great.
Director Warwick.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Collins, I have a few questions. The other questions that have been asked tonight have been along the same lines I was thinking, but I just have a couple more. How many Airbnbs do we have in the city of Little Rock?
Well, we're not counting them right now. You know, essentially you can take a snapshot. When I first started doing this several years ago, when we first done the initial report, it was just on one platform, Airbnb, it was maybe 225, 250 listed, you know, continually. And now we're seeing it about the 300 range. You know, it could go up to 350. But that's what we're seeing, but that's a snapshot in time. Right. That's not a registered number. That's just going on one day and going on Airbnb and just listing how many is for rental in the city of Little Rock.
Well, we have a lot of people that want to talk about it, so I was just concerned about what the numbers were that were out there. If we had a neighborhood that had a POA, a bill of assurance, or homeowners association, we had an Airbnb go in there, we would not deny that applicant the ability to apply for special use or zoning. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
Director Wyrick, it's not totally correct. You championed the ordinance. While the city, because we're not parties to the contract, will not enforce a bill of assurance, that the Planning Commission is given total authority to consider that, whether or not to take certain actions it needs to take.
but my question was, you would not tell an applicant that they cannot do the application because the neighborhood has a POA, bill of assurance, or homeowners association. They would still take the application in. Okay. All right. So I know I championed that, but I'm not sure that it's used the way I wanted it to be used. But anyway, so it does come to the city board, and the city board or the planning commission, and they approve it. The only thing that the neighborhood would have would be a civil matter. They'd have to take the opportunity to court in order to stop Airbnb.
Well, that is one of them, that I agree. Any decision either made by the Planning Commission on a special use permit or the Board of Directors can be appealed. So the Planning Commission special use permit is appealable to the Board of Directors. Right. And the Board of Directors' decision, if approved or denied, is, I think that next level is appealable to court. So they have that appeal process.
That becomes a civil matter.
Yes, and
that was my point.
And the other process is if they do have a POA with bylaws, covenants, and restrictions that are in there that limits a commercial or that type of business use on there, and I don't know the verbiage to all the covenants and restrictions of there, then they could also seek remedy in a private lawsuit between those entities. The city would not be part of that because we do not enforce the covenants and restrictions.
I just don't want neighborhood folks to walk away from here saying that, you know, if I go and build a POA or I look at my bill of assurance or I renew my bill of assurance, that's an opportunity to deny a Airbnb because it's iffy at best. There were some comments that were made about a lot of people here have their Airbnbs that they're working in the city, and there were comments made about corporations that have Airbnbs. Do they not go through the same permitting process that an individual that has a home in Little Rock that's making it Airbnb go through?
They would have to go through the same permitting process.
So there's no breaks for them.
No.
Okay. And that's really clarification for those that said corporations could come in and do whatever. Okay. The grandfathered, I wanted to ask a little bit more questions on that. Somebody that's already got a permit for Airbnb in the city, are they going to have to follow this new ordinance with all of the new requirements?
If it has not been acted upon by the Planning Commission and the board, yes, and that's part of a 6-month grace period that we have put in the ordinance to allow them to come in and apply for whatever type they are, STR1, STR2, into that process. I also do what I've spoke with several board members that even, and I don't know about every terms and conditions with all the short-term rental platforms out there, but even Airbnb in that terms and conditions, when an entity of a property wants to enter into that agreement for a short-term rental, zoning verification is in that agreement, that it is the property owner's responsibility or that for the not Airbnb's responsibility to verify the zoning. So what we're asking is what they should be doing when they start up that operation is verification of the zoning. So that there is a 6-month grace period, and there's one for STR1s that essentially they get a chance to come in and apply. So that would be the one that's owner occupied. And then we make a determination we investigate based on see if there's any complaints been driven on the property that we may have or not have. And then the only difference is the SDR2 would have to go through the plan development process because they're not owner occupied. So it essentially would set them a place in line, hold them off because it depends on the number that we get on what that would be.
So they have the zoning in place. These are the grandfathered ones that we've already approved. They have the zoning in place, but they have to reapply to follow these particular items in this zoning, in this new ordinance?
No, if they have the zoning in place, they would just fall underneath the yearly inspections and the license, business license, which I'm assuming since they've had their zoning approved, they're doing that, but then they'd fall underneath the yearly inspection fee. They would not have to reapply. They have already went through a zoning process.
Okay, and when they went through the zoning process though, did they have to, well, I guess they didn't go through the inspection, which is what you addressed. And do they fit within the 1,500 feet of an owner-occupied location? I mean, all that is in place with the grandfathered ones?
Yes, whatever was approved, the conditions that it was approved as stay in place. Only the inspections would be what we was.
These are new items, so these are going to be different than what they were approved under.
No, if a site, short-term rentals have went through the process, then whatever conditions was listed in there, they would have to comply with those conditions. If you're asking about the fire extinguishers and stuff like that, yeah, that's additional. That's a guideline. They would have to adhere to those guidelines, but not apply through rezoning. So when we go inspect, we would make sure that they have the smoke detectors, the fire extinguishers, those set guidelines that would be part of all short-term rentals.
Okay, and so they're in place for the way they were approved for right now, but in a year, they've got to go through the inspection and then come into line with the change that have been made to the ordinance. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, with the guidelines, the life safety issues.
Okay. Okay. I think this is my last question. So we talked about going from 5 to 9, and I keep looking at my cell phone because that's where my ordinance is. It keeps going away. Sorry. Okay, it says in here that you've revised the ordinances and it allows guest rooms from 5 to 9. And you did that because anything more than 9 would be considered a hotel, and anything 9 or less would be an STR. Okay, so when an applicant comes in and they're talking about wanting to do an STR and they want to do 9, and so they're in Ward 3 with skinny streets, and they've got small lots. And so we're talking about a density issue, and we're also talking about a traffic congestion issue. Do you turn people away at that point whenever they say, I want to do an STR here, I want 9 rooms, and all they have is maybe 1 or 2 parking spaces and on the street? Do you ever turn anybody away for that? Is that not a consideration for an approval for an STR, is the narrow streets and the small property?
The application is, we accept the applications because they are, they have a right to the process. Now, the recommendation, I think, is what you're getting at. So yes, we do look at that. That's when there is provide a parking plan and some other issues, and then we present our recommendation, whether for or against, to the Planning Commission. If it just goes to the Planning Commission as a special use permit, or to both the Planning Commission and the board for plan development. So all those can be taken into consideration when we do the write-up and we investigate that process. But we accept the application for process.
Okay. Do you look at density?
Yes, we do. We look at, because we always, before y'all heard me talk about, I think in short-term rentals before, is just the change of character of a neighborhood. Even with placement of duplexes, I mean, it would change. There's a difference having a couple duplexes on a block to having all duplexes on a block. So it could change the character of a neighborhood just in location, density, and number of not just short-term rentals, but even long-term rentals, just ownership, single-family ownership of a house, home, as opposed to renting the home, can change the aspect of that neighborhood. I always like to look at the stream as what would a block look like? So what would a block of single-family homes look like, as opposed to a block of duplexes, as opposed to a block of short-term rentals, and how would that aspect change for all those things that you just spoke about for parking and other aspects? So that is part of when we look at it and present of how many we feel is enough for the neighborhood and our recommendation and presentation to either the board or the Planning Commission.
I know at one time we had an issue with so many childcare locations going in, and we limited the number of childcare facilities that can be in a given area. Do we still have that ordinance in place? And do you have a number for density when it's too much?
I cannot remember that in the place. That'd be something I'd have to get back with you on that. I can't remember that I remember setting that for those. We've had some questions brought up in the past regarding different types of commercial uses. And there is some type of aspect in free business. That business is going to regulate itself. You're not going to have necessarily 4 gas stations on a intersection. They'll tend to regulate themselves by traffic and getting in and out and
I
competition.
think we might have some of that in some places.
And we do have some, but also please keep in mind that just free business and no regulation could also end up with several things that would go against. That's why we have zoning ordinances. That's why we enact those, that you can't have commercial everywhere, or you don't want residential everywhere. You want certain type uses in certain zoned areas to help a whole community grow.
So you don't really have a density number?
Not right now, no.
You
We don't,
just
we
look
look
at
at
the
that
area.
we didn't put one in this ordinance. We believe that it is a little bit self-driven. We also believe that we need to look at that based upon the location, because density in one area of town may be different than density in another area of town.
Okay, and do you have an application process already put together?
Yes, for the plan development, there's already a process in there, and then a special use process is already defined. It is not defined in here. They are a separate process defined in code.
But anybody could go out on the internet and pull up the application?
Yes.
For this, okay, because that was brought up. They didn't know what the permitting process.
So currently, all our forms are electronic online. And we also have them, if people come to our office, we still have some hard copies that they're able to pick up. And then they could send them back to us, scan them, email them back to us. Hopefully, by the end of the year, it'll all be in our new system for applications online.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Wyrick. We'll now go to Director Lewis, then Richardson, then Phillips.
I'm sorry, Mayor, my hands should be down.
Your hands down.
Just want to say thank you, Jamie, for all the work that you have been doing on this, and hearing some of the clarifications. It's kind of eased some of my concerns, so thanks again. But I do want to ask, are we able to distinguish the phone calls to the police, distinguish between the owners and then neighbors who are calling to make the complaints? Because I don't think the owners should be penalized when they are trying to be proactive and get a handle on a situation. So what can we do in that matter?
Well, Director Lewis, that would be in our investigation of that complaint or that call. If they're calling in, they're giving their name to police, it's in a report. We do go pull those reports and look at them and compare it with whomever the agent is or property owner for that short-term rental, the one that's going to be the responsible party on there. Like I said, in that confirmed scenario, it's kind of the same thing. I know Mr. Moore can speak a little bit possibly in our CAP, but even in our CAP program, we want participation. We want the local property owners to try to participate in that. They're, I wouldn't really say policing, but they're, regulating their own property to try to keep that down. That benefits the neighborhood. So we would look at those same issues. Where we're looking at for the confirmed is, are they doing anything? Is it happening in a repeated manner? They may say that they're calling the police, but if it's continual, then there may be an issue there that we need to look at further. So that's why I say I cannot say that it's just because they called the police, it's not going to be counted into 3. We have to investigate it. We have to confirm what that was and truly look at it. We're not just going to take it down and log it down and say it was a call, so that's 1. We need to confirm it. That's why we wanted to put that in there for both people calling for noise and also for all the people that are the responsible parties.
So there will be a penalty if the same occurrence does not cease.
Well, there's not a monetary penalty in here.
No, I'm saying where it adds to the number of times or the maximum amount of times that they can have a complaint made, then they're shut down, right?
Then it could be, yes.
In the business.
Yeah, and there is an appeal process that they felt like the staff made a judgment administratively. There's an appeal process that they can go through and voice their concerns in that appeal process.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Richardson, did you put your hand back up?
No, Mayor, it should be down.
Well, we'll figure out.
Harris, need your help, my friend.
It's down now.
It was down before, Mayor. You called me, but since you called me.
I mean, I'm just sitting right here.
Well, since you called me, let me follow up on Director Phillips' question with
You started.
with Tom with respect to the process, because we've had strip malls actually be placed in our CAP program, and we've lost in court to those particular strip malls based on our rationale or reasoning or evidence-based documentation of criminal acts occurring at those strip malls to even have them in our CAP program. Am I correct?
I mean, yes and no. What the court has said on an offense like loitering or something of that nature, that if the owner of the property calls the police on the offense, then we can't use that against the owner as not taking care of their property.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Director Phillips?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Two more questions for Director Collins that I forgot to ask. We received some emails, and I think at the last public session, there was a question asked of me, and I said I would ask it of you as it relates to how does the inspection requirement for the short-term rentals in this ordinance compare to what's required for hotels currently?
Well, the inspection, it regards to the size or the number of units, and that is dictated by the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code. So our inspections are done pursuant to that code based upon their access. So there's some general stuff, like every room or bedroom has to have egress or, out like a door or a secondary if it gets onto the second floor. But a hotel is, as you get higher in number, they have to have other requirements. So there is a size that's set. The inspection still needs to happen, but it is a different additional criteria for what they may need to be provided based upon height, like a sprinkler system, where a short-term rental and a residence may not have to have a sprinkler system, but a hotel of a certain size or height would. So it's not that we're not going to do that inspection, it's the fact that it just changes the criteria based upon the Fire Prevention Code. And I can't speak of every nuance to that, but I'd be happy to get with staff and present you where that would change for the size and based upon the use of the property, because zoning use does not exactly align with the types of construction inside the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code.
Understood, but just for clarity, hotels we do require an inspection, and they pay an inspection fee just like these short-term rental owners would.
Well, they don't get an inspection fee from us. That is through the fire marshal's office, and that I cannot answer. I do not know if they charge a fee for those inspections.
Okay, that's what I wanted clarity on. Thank you. And then lastly, we have two different types of short-term rentals in this ordinance, but the 500 cap is for both types, right? That's a collective 500, correct?
That is correct.
And the process for the type 1, would you agree with me that that's a quicker process than type 2?
Yes, it's quicker as because it just stops at the Planning Commission unless appealed to the board.
So was there any consideration given to the number or types of short-term rentals where we wanted more rather than the other? Was that considered?
Yes, in that consideration, the comment that was brought up, and I believe that was at the Philander Smith, because it was still treated a little bit different between the two, so we aligned them with both and made it on a per room basis. So where a SDR1, somebody living there or owner occupied, it may only have a couple rooms or guest rooms, and so they would be 200. But if they're in that 1,500 feet and they're renting out a house that's 300, then it'd be, or 3 guest rooms, then it'd be 300. So we tried to simplify it back down to just a per room or guest room, per bedroom or guest room basis, to be fair on either one.
But there's no, just theoretically, we could have 450 type 1s and 50 type 2s?
We could, we don't know that
Right.
right now because we don't have the list. We're not, they're not getting licensed. Everybody going through the deal. We don't have an inventory and we've not done inspections.
Okay. Thank you, Director Collins. That's all I have for Director Collins, Mayor.
Mayor, if there are no more questions, I'd like to.
We got one more question.
Okay, I'm trying to call the question.
Director
I
Peck.
apologize.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Again, Jamie and your staff, thank you. I know you've been working on this forever. Vice Mayor Webb probably has put more time into this than all of the rest of the board combined, and I appreciate that. I think this is a good starting point. I'm going to support this ordinance. Are there some changes that will, I'm sure, be made down the road? Absolutely. I think Fayetteville and Hot Springs are in the process of doing that now. So doesn't mean it's set in stone. I think that most of the neighborhoods want us to enact some sort of a regulatory process. I too am a fan of STRs. I usually stay in STRs when I travel. But I think there needs to be some sort of regulation. And I think this is a good starting point. So I will be in support of it. And thanks for all your hard work on this, Vice Mayor Webb and Director Collins. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Call the question, Mayor.
There's a motion second. Call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. We've now had 3 readings on this particular ordinance. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. We'll now open the hearing for public hearing from item number 23. We have 2 that are for item number 23. We can, and Mr. Tony Manzel and Shane, I know you said if needed. I think if we got 2 for, I don't see any against. May not be needed. All right. We'll close this hearing. All those in favor, well, Madam Clerk, you never read it. I'm sorry.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 19,531 of May the 2nd, 2006, to annex lots 57A, 57B, and 57C, Block 2 of Taylor Park Subdivision, Phase 3, in addition to the City of Little Rock Multipurpose Property Owners Improvement District, number 27, and for the purposes first reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 19,531 to annex lots 57A, 57B, and 57C, Block 2 of Taylor Park Subdivision, Phase 3, in addition to the City of Little Rock Multipurpose Property Owners Improvement District number 27, second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 19,531 to annex lots 57A, 57B, and 57C, Block 2 of Taylor Park Subdivision, Phase 3, in addition to the City of Little Rock Multipurpose Property Owners Improvement District number 27, third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. We'll now close this hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Moore.
on item 24, I have been out to this proposed district along with Director Collins and Director Honeywell. And I feel that the subdivision ordinance that was approved should be referred back to the Planning Commission because I do feel like the individual, the property owner committed to some things that aren't happening at this point. So I would recommend that we send the item back to the Planning Commission for further review and hold off on this item until that review is completed.
So move.
So moved.
And for the board's benefit, the only basis you can have for the denial of a municipal property owner's improvement district is if it is going to be adverse to other properties. So what will be happening is the Planning Commission will see what the subdivision said, what has been done, and then basically tell the board whether or not it's adverse to the property owners.
That's what I said.
That's right. I heard you. You said it.
All right, there's a motion from Director Compurius, a second from Director Richardson to refer back to the Planning Commission. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. We'll now go to citizens communication. Mr. Luke Scrable.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to exercise my First Amendment rights. I'd like to sidestep my usual spotlighting of the dishonesty and the government corruption of those we elect and those they hire tonight to actually spotlight some excellence. When Bob Biles left as our finance director, he was a standout individual and he was very good at his job. He was kind enough to take Sarah Linehan under his wing, mentor her, teach her to follow in his footsteps. When Bob Biles left, Miss Linehan took over, and I never blinked an eye. It's one of the few things that I was happy about in this city. Miss Linehan is a very decent human being. She's very professional. She's very competent at her job. And she deserves to be recognized for the excellence that she's done for this city and for every citizen that depends on prudent financial management. So I'd just like to, just be public tonight and just thank Miss Linehan for all her public service and her excellence. And it would have been nice if the management of this room here would have filled her position before she left and assured that when she leaves, we'd be as secure as a city and the citizens with our contributions. But that obviously that was a aftersight or whatever. It wasn't thought of, but I just would like to thank Ms. Linehan and wish her well in her retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scrable. Ms. Shayla Hooks.
Hello. Thanks for allowing me to speak today. I'm coming today because I have 2 adult sons that have started their own business. They both started with the city of Little Rock, and they have been bidding on, I think, roofing jobs and demolition jobs. Last year, my oldest son called me. He said, "Hey, Mom, they denied my bid. They said that I couldn't be approved to do the bid because they won't accept your business as a reference." So I told him, hey, just let that go because Ricky Evans, he has a personal vendetta against me. So don't bid on roofing jobs. Bid on demolition jobs. So my youngest son went to the contractor's licensing board, had to speak with them about giving him his license. He went out and purchased a trailer, a tractor. Both of my sons own tractors and trailers. Cat's brand new dump trailers. And again, this year, this month, Ricky Evans told him, If you use Hooks Construction as a reference, you're not gonna be awarded the bid. And I'm here today to find out why. It's like my sons are being blackballed. If you don't like me, that's a personal thing. If you don't like me, that's personal. But if I'm doing good work, I've never had a complaint, I've never been sued, my son's the same way, why are you blackballing my children now? Why is this happening? And why is the housing department allowed to have all this fraud going on in their procurement department? Why is it still 3 years? I bowed out. I didn't bid with you guys. I had to sue the city because I wasn't paid for 3 jobs. Then I said, I'm not gonna do any work with the city no more. I don't trust the city of Little Rock or their employees. I'm gonna go to DOT, the state, City of North Little Rock, UALR, different places like that to stay in business. And so my sons go there, they're productive. I hear about them every day in the community. I hear people call me every day about my sons. So why now is my sons being punished for them the housing department having a personal vendetta against me for speaking out against the injustices that's going on? So I'm trying to figure out how I can get this on the agenda. If you have a federal government number I can call to complain about, because it's getting out of hand at this point. And I would like to be refunded my business license fees with the City of Little Rock. If we can't do business with the City of Little Rock, I think it's fair that I be refunded my fees. My sons be refunded their fees. We be refunded our insurance. We've been refunded for everything that we had to pay for to start doing business with the city. And so I'll be back in 2 weeks, and I'll be looking to have some type of response or something about this because it's so unfair and it's not right. And y'all have been allowing it for a long time, but I've been speaking about it consistently, and I've been ignored consistently.
Ms. Uxley,
Thank you.
thank you. Members of the board, are there any questions before we adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
This motion, is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it.